Welcome, everyone, to Intermediate Selfology with yours truly, Tristan McGough, your philosopher at large, who is hosting today the Essence of Selfhood. And this is complete identity, identification, and individuality according to the naturally arising, pristine cognitions that we all have as the central intuitive ideas of self, whether it's of oneness or of allness or of the singularity of our individual being or of reality or of any of the others, including becoming the adept. As we've looked at these 7 ideas, and if I were to list them in a reversed order, beginning with parousia, this relates to the naturally arising cognition that is known as the all-accomplishing. It's called all-accomplishing because at this point, the mystery has been completely mastered. And so the central word that indicates, the characteristic, if you will, that indicates this idea is mastery. And we all have this at some point or another. We realize that the self is actually only what's been mastered. In that small realization, we see the seed of what becomes for the all-accomplishing adept as complete mastery of the meaning, myth, the magic, and the miracle that we call existence. And at this point, the prousic being, the one who experiences a very unique sense of self as that mastery, attains a sovereignty by itself. But the by itself is not as a limited individual finite being. It works in utter synergy with the paraverse, the multiverse, and the universe, of which it's a constituted causal part as an entity. In omniphilosophy, the branch that deals, the discipline that deals with this idea of completing the circuit of conscious existence, emergence and fulfillment of the one is called eschatology, relating to the final things. And it turns out that the final things are the foundational things that are, if you will, occurring right now, except for some of us who have not removed the levels of obscuration of the different levels of the I, from the I through the I am to the I thou, all the way down to the I it, here on the physical plane. For those who haven't removed all those obscurations, for us, mastery, as one of these pristine ideas, is where we see ourselves as our most real and authentic selves when we are capable of mastery, sovereignty, the autonomy that allows us the freedom to do exactly which is within the inside being mirrored on the outside. The next of the 7 ideas is that of the psychonaut. And that's where the all-expanding into itself of agency occurs, and where the individual understands, first of all, as a conscious being, as cognos, the person, they're a conscious being. We're all conscious beings. But as a pilgrim, we become a transformed conscious being. Actually, a transforming cosmic being, or conscious being, if you will, a wisening being. One who takes the faculties, powers, and states of consciousness and consciously, methodically utilizes them in order to expand fully. And this is, of course, into itself. It is expanding fully into its potentials as an actualizing being. Cognos is the all-discerning, and this is the cogency where we have clear, direct, instant knowing. This is self-consciousness, and this, as existentialists like to say, is the for itself. It's consciousness. And consciousness at the level of the physical world, it borrows its being. But of course, at the level of the psyche, it enjoys its being. It is completely absorbed with the being that it devours consciously as cognitions. And this is the person, as we've mentioned, and if we were looking at omniphilosophy and saying, well, what's the discipline there? It would be cognology, which is, if you will, psychology expanded, right? We're not just dealing with the empiric self. Where do we have this here? The empiric self here is the field of empirical and experimental psychology, behavioral psychology, etc. So many that we know. When we get deeper into the depth psychology of Freud and admitting the unconscious and the interplay of subconscious and preconscious elements, well, then we're the egoic self, the psychical realm, the psychic self, where here we're in just the personal self. So the green indicates the depth psychology, and transpersonal psychology delves at various levels here into the cogno and intuitive realms of being. Cognos allows us to understand as a person, as a conscious being, that we are deeper than just the empiric self or our own psychical epistic self, or even our spiritual gnosic pneumatic self, the self of us, the part of us which is universal in nature. And that's actually what's amplified and exemplified and expressed as one moves from cognos and transforms conscious being as a pilgrim into the realm of the psychonaut. The branch that we study there, the discipline that covers that, is soteriology, which still is salvation or liberation, emancipation of the soul. That is, how does one attain freedom from the bondage of this world? The psychonaut discovers the parousic adept recovers completely all of these magical elements that form the deeper layers of our self, known as divinity. The other four aspects relate to the self as seen either as the one, which would be the aeon, or all and everything, soul and single, anything you can toss into this hopper, including non-being, belongs in omnos. And that's the all. That's the unlimited being. Just as the one of aeon is the single being. And then there's the real. And that's the real being, of course. That's actual being. And actual being or reality turns out to be a recipe. Reality is not just being. It is not just finite being. It is not just universal or ideal being. It is not merely consciousness. It is not merely the absence of being or consciousness that we term the void or abhava. It happens to be four things. What creates reality is infinite being, finite being, conscious being, and non-being. These four and their interactions create reality. Reality is not created by anything else other than conscious being, carving up infinite being through non-being into finite being. The aeon, as we've repeated so often, is the one source from which everything, if you will, radiates. And at the same time, that aeon is itself present within the entire triverse of whether it's the paraverse, the multiverse, or the universe. Take the universe and look at it as if you maximized it infinitely in all of its finite and transfinite elements, and that would be, of course, the multiverse, which we do not access. That is its own causal net of entities in their unique universal space-time system, just as we have our unique space-time system with our entities according to causal and mathematically precise laws. And that's our universe. It doesn't mean we can't think of another universe and include it as part of our imagined multiverse. Although, when it comes to imagination, remember, it's a semblance and a resemblance. It's not the real thing. When I speak of the sphere of consciousness, we can imagine and we use an image of a sphere. But you don't really think that my consciousness is a sphere, right? When I think of a sphere, I don't have a spherical idea. When I think of a cube, I don't have a cubical idea. When I think of a triangle, I don't have a triangular idea. I have an idea. The triangle that we represent here, in which we define conceptually, can be represented by different images. But none of that is triangularity, no matter how many triangles I make. That doesn't make triangularity, which exists on an altogether different level as an essence, as one of the elements that the ego uses in fashioning itself, as well as in its transfinite interactions as part of a universe. So here we have the Omnos, which is the one and only sole and single, all and everything of anything that is something, whether it's nothing, no being, whether it's conscious being, whether it's finite being, or whether it's infinite being. That's Omnos. The Aeon, on the other hand, is all equalizing because it's the one, where the Omnos is the triverse, plus it's the tricosm, the macrocosm, the microcosm, and then all the little cells and atoms in me, the minicosms. As well as it creates these three planes that we have so often referred to. And you can look at those three worlds, right? This is the world of Rupa, the form world, or pardon me, this would be the desire world in a better rendering, because it's the finite world. Rupa is one of those terms that could mean form of the form world, or, as very often in Platonic language, these are the ideal forms, the ideas. And that would, of course, would be in the psychical sphere of the egoic realm. But frankly, in terms of the triverse, we have here the concrete finite world, here we have the finite world, and here we have the infinite world. And the omnifinite world of the Aeon is something that we've discussed before, but includes everything all together from the point through the pivot to the plenum. So in terms of our intermediate selfology, we've taken a look at all 7 ideas. We've looked at them closely. We've looked at them distinctly. We've looked at them in some amount of detail. Now, I look forward in the future to providing advanced selfology, in which we will take specific ideas and specific aspects of those ideas and specific relationships among the ideas and delve into them further from an omniphilosophic point of view. So, until then, behave when you must, be good whenever you can, but above all else, be yourself.